Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Trisha Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now.
Hi, Trisha. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Crystal. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. I'm loving the beautiful weather outside.
Aren't you? Oh my gosh, it's so pretty and it's warm. It's actually warm. I feel almost overdressed with this 3/4 sleeve t-shirt on, right?
It's time for the summer clothes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So wasn't that fun last week when we had Suzanne Weller from the Courage Effect podcast on?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. She was great.
Yeah, I loved her stories about some of the people who have the guests that have been on her show. Mm-hmm. And when she shared about what she learned about courage and how to be a courageous leader, that was really, really helpful.
Yes. I think just her journey to get to where she is today was absolutely fascinating. You know, it says a lot about people, you know, when they talk about how they were raised and then how they show up as a result of it. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it was great. And so we were so inspired by that episode, we thought, let's do a GEMS.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about courage as well, but we thought we would actually do a deep dive, almost, this is a GEMS, but almost a coach's corner.
It is almost, yes.
On a couple of things that leaders can do, and we're all leaders, so that any one of you can do, any one of us can do, regarding how to show up more courageously and how to actually take some action. What are some tactics that we can do to be a more courageous leader?
And I think that I love that we're doing this, and I think that what is might be a surprise for some people who have been leaders for a long time is that this stuff is not new and different. It is foundational, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, as we were doing some of the research for this, I was kind of surprised by some of the models we were looking at. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this was that. And it was like, actually, this is what I was taught as a repackaged version of something that was developed years ago and more foundational. So that's always interesting.
Yeah. You know, I think we have to be realistic and realize that, you know, we may be doing things in new ways. We may be addressing things a little differently because of where we are today and the resources we have that are different from the old days, right? But some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff that was developed or, you know, created many, many years ago is foundational, and you can spin off of it all sorts of ways, but it's always going to be sound foundation for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You can look at new and innovative ways to actually implement it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at today at 3 different things. One is how we lead and manage change. We're going to share with you a model that we love around how to do that. And when we think about leading change and being a courageous leader, we recognize that it isn't just about stepping out all on your own and stepping out without a plan. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that plan might look like. And then the second thing we're going to talk about is cultivating a growth mindset. So how do we deal with failure? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, because if we're really being courageous, it's not going to work out every time. And so we want to learn to figure out, how do we learn from that to be even better?
That's right.
And then the last thing we're going to touch on is delegation. And I'll tell you, this one is a really tricky one, I think, for leaders, and how it connects to courage is that I know, and we've all dealt with this, right? Where when you step away from the work a little bit and we give some of that autonomy to other people, it can feel really scary. It can feel like it takes courage to let go a little bit. And so we thought that would be a helpful one for people as well.
Yeah, I think I like it. There are so many different things you can do to be courageous, right?
Yeah.
As a leader. And we don't have to have the whole laundry list. But if we have a few things, and really it's all about that upfront planning for it. Courage is not something that's just always spontaneous. Sometimes it is something that takes time.
Yeah.
I just think that we should always make sure that everybody knows that we're not telling them the definitive answer to being courageous in leadership, right?
Yes. This is it. If you can do this, you are courageous all the time, every time, and perfectly. Yeah.
It covers everything.
Yeah. No, these are just, and we're big fans of experimenting.
Yes.
So we hope that even maybe you'll be inspired to experiment with one of these. So it's small steps, right? Take a small step, try something new that helps you be courageous. You build that muscle. And Suzanne actually talked about that as well. It's like, don't go out there if you're trying to build your courage muscle and take on something really huge unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
Do small things over time. You build that muscle, you build your confidence, you build your knowledge base about it as well. And then take on something bigger.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways you can do that is to have a roadmap or, some kind of step-by-step, right? And so step-by-step, we started looking at, leading change boldly. The whole idea is to advocate for and guide change, even through discomfort. And so what we saw as being a good model for that was Kotter's 8 steps for change, right?
Yep.
And I'll just go quickly through at least what I pulled up for the 8 steps. And I think I've known this since it came out. I've been following it. I knew somebody who used to be a roommate of his in college.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, it was like we heard about it a lot when I was growing up in business.
Oh, yeah.
So the first step, and the 8 steps are progressive. So the first step is having a sense of urgency, identifying a sense of urgency, right? And you need to have a reason for doing something. And if you're going to step out and do change, what's the reason for it? If you're changing for change's sake, you're doing it for the wrong reason, right?
Yeah.
But if you're changing because you need something that works better, or you are moving in a new direction with a client and they need something different and you need to work with them, or for any reason, if it's perhaps you're in an organization where the culture is starting to get complacent. Sometimes change can turn that around, right? But it takes courage to take that first step, which is, I want to identify the urgency and let people know about it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And creating that urgency includes creating something, a statement or something like that is inspirational.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're inspiring people to actually make a change. So yes, it can be something that is, sometimes people call it a burning platform. So sometimes it's something that is really negative. The business is going to close, or it can be something absolutely inspirational, like we're going to be the first to put a man on the moon. The second one is building a guiding coalition. And I love this one because sometimes when we think about courage and having to take a courageous act, we think about it being by ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's important to have people on that journey with you. And so who are those people that you need around you who are like-minded that can help you to implement this courageous act?
And sometimes the first courageous part of that is actually reaching out.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The third step is to form a strategic vision. It's really important to understand why you're doing the change, right? What do you want this to accomplish down the line? What do you want the organization to benefit from this? How do you want it to benefit from this? And how do you want this to either guide what you're doing in the future or define what you're doing in the future? It's also brave, I think, to create strategy. You know what seems important to you, right? And what you envision. But having to sell that to people and stand on what you say, that's a risk, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that really is that next third step, form a strategic vision. Mm-hmm. So you kind of covered that already, but really getting clear and clarifying how the future will be different from the past and getting buy-in for how how you can make that future a reality through initiatives and communication and things like that. And then the fourth one, enlist a voluntary army. I
Yes.
think that's an interesting perspective. I'm not sure I like the title of that, but enlist, basically, this is the group of people that are going to help you actually implement. The other group that we were talking about, the coalition, that's really more about sort of like-minded thought leaders who help from a leading perspective. This is the people that are actually going to get the work done.
That's right.
Yeah. So make sure that you've got the right teams in place to help you.
The fifth one is to enable action by removing barriers. And that's really all about removing those obstacles that kind of get in your way, slow things down, or create like roadblocks towards you getting to your change. To clear the way for people to innovate, you want to make sure that you put things in place or make sure you have resources and things that enable people to move forward, not to hold off because they don't have what they need, right?
Yeah. Number 6, I love this one. Generate short-term wins.
Yes.
That really helps us with keeping our momentum going. Yeah.
I always think of milestone moments when I think of that.
Yeah.
You know?
That we don't have to wait until the very end of the project, which could take a whole year. Or more even to get done. It's like, how do we, like you said, milestones, how do we chunk it out so that we know that we're actually making progress, we're measuring that progress, and we're celebrating it.
The next one is to sustain acceleration. As you're going through and having successes, you're still going to need to keep going. And so it's really about pressing harder after the first success and keep doing that, and that's where milestone moments come into play, because you can look at, if you've got a long range goal and it's a year out and you've got milestones along the way, you can hit that milestone, celebrate, and then push harder for the next milestone because it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Celebrate that when you get to it, but it is the way that you get to the end. If we get complacent or we get comfortable, sometimes along the way we're doing a project or we're making a change, we may find ourselves kind of mired in one spot and not moving forward all the way. And that does happen.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Because each step can be, and is usually a little bit uncomfortable because it's making another change. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the last step is institute change. So this is really about being able to show that these changes are actually making a positive impact on the overall success of the organization. And also making sure that it's well instituted into all the systems in the organization. So you should see it showing up throughout all levels and across an organization.
I think I always recommend when people are going to employ the 8 steps of change that they document along the way so that they have a historical view of what they did, because another change is going to come along, right?
Yeah.
And if you're always reinventing the wheel, that's a way of losing your courage, because it's like, oh, what did we do? I don't know what to do. I'm not sure I can make the first step. If you document it, it makes it a lot easier the next time.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that 8 steps from Cotter. You can see that there's a lot of courage required at each step and throughout each step. But it gets away from this notion that we have to go it alone, and it has to just be sort of a gut reaction, that we can actually make a plan and we can gather the right people to help us lead it and to implement any courageous act.
Yes. Yeah. It's not often that if you're in any kind of business that you really do everything alone, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Very rare.
You probably won't be successful if you are.
Well, you're going to have a one-sided view of things, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The next thing that we wanted to talk a little bit about was cultivating a growth mindset. And one tool for that is after action reviews. And we wanted to take a little bit of a slight shift on this one and look at after action reports through an appreciative inquiry model. So instead of always going to our negative bias that we have around what went wrong, where did we see failure, we're going to actually take a look at this from a strengths-based approach and say, what went well and how do we replicate that? And what I love about that is that we are going right for the good stuff. So we don't have to question, are we going to the target? It's like, where's the target? Where did we have success getting there? And we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it's also inspiring and energizing. So it really helps move people in that direction.
I love that shift.
Yeah.
We have so many opportunities to do something like that, and instead we follow a different model, which is usually what didn't we do well, and where did we miss the boat, that kind of thing. It's like, no, it's good. And it really does shift. It shifts people's thinking to where they are probably going to be way more engaged next time too. Right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. They want to participate in this. So the first step in the 4D cycle of appreciative inquiry, and we think about it from the perspective of a review at the end of something that we've done, is discovery, focusing on what went well, identifying strengths, and celebrating successes. And so you can have questions about all of those, but one question that you might use during this part of the process is, what are you most proud of? And what was a peak moment? The second step is dream. Envision a better future. What improvements can be made and how strengths can be leveraged? And a question you could use here, a very simple question, is, what could we do even better?
Yes.
The third step is design. Develop concrete plans for implementing those changes that you just identified, and using strengths as a foundation for innovation. So making sure that we're bringing back in to this process, what are our strengths and how can we leverage them? Some questions that you might use here: how can we utilize our strengths and our superpowers to create our next steps? And the last step for this one is destiny. Implement the changes, track progress, and continue to build on success. So some questions we might do here are, how have we sustained achievements and successes in the past? And how can we use this new information to sustain our success into the future?
I love this. It's really changes the way I'm sure a person who hears those questions would approach their responses. It's like, we could do it again. It's almost engaging. It's very engaging, right?
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. And this sometimes can be a hard sell because people really want to go to that, what was the worst thing that happened and how, and it's really okay in an after action report or meeting to go there for a little bit. So that is important. So we want to honor those things as well. The point, though, is that we don't just stay there. We can go ahead and we can identify that, but let's look to our strengths. Let's look to our successes for what we want to really replicate.
This is the shift in the foundational model that we were talking about.
Yeah.
It may be an old model to do an after action review, but to twist it to where you are focusing on the positive rather than the things that did not necessarily go the way you wanted it to.
Yeah.
I think it shifts the way people look at things. It probably sparks a ton of creativity, I would think.
Yeah.
Right?
The other thing that I think that it really helps with is sometimes we can get sort of this bias around what we've done in the past, and we don't even look at what the new possibilities are.
Yes.
We just try and fix the old. And so there's so much, I think about like AI, like there's so many new things that are happening. If we aren't sort of looking at what are the possibilities, then we miss out on all of that. And our after action doesn't really truly help us to plan for the future.
Using AI as an example is really awesome because there are still a lot of people who are afraid of AI because they haven't had much exposure to it.
Yeah.
And of course, it's going to be different for different people. But there are so many opportunities to navigate with it or dance with it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of giving over to it, all you're doing is using it sometimes as a tool for deep diving. Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to give your job over to AI. You can actually, I would never recommend that anyway. I would recommend, see what it can help you with.
Yeah.
And then leave it on the shelf and do what you carve it into something that really fits you.
Right.
But you can always use a little bit of their nudge, right?
Yeah. Thought partner or brainstorm partner. Yeah.
And the last thing we were going to talk about today in terms of, being courageous is empowering others. And it's about sharing power and giving others the authority to lead. And so for that, we chose delegation as the tool or the steps. And so there are some really simple steps to delegating, and there are about 8 of them. So, listen in. The first one is to define the task clearly, because we might, in our head, because we do everything, we may have a whole different sense of what that task is. But if we're going to be able to get rid of it or give it off to somebody to do it for us, we need to be able to define it in a way that is clear, so that if someone you're giving it to doesn't quite understand it, you can have a conversation about it, but they know enough to have that conversation. They don't know what they know, or they know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
The next step is to choose the right person. And by that, it's not choose the person that is a favorite or somebody who is your, teacher's pet, go-to person, right? Always that person who is, proactive, wants to get out there. That may not be the best person for a delegated job.
Yeah.
You may have someone who is very shy and absolutely amazing with figures or something, and so think about what you need in this task and choose a person who you believe would have compatible skills to take that on.
This may be coming later. Just want to interject on one thing there. Also be thinking about where people want to go.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm spoiling the...
No, you're not. That was good. That's
So
great.
if we know as leaders that this person really wants to develop skills in budgeting or strategic planning or communication,
Right.
giving them a delegated task that helps them to build those skills is also really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up, because when I said that, I was in my head thinking, but did not say out loud, the fact that it's okay to pick people who don't have the skills, but have the potential.
Yeah.
Right. And so if there's a need to, even if you have a need for this person to have different skills, to bring the topic into play with them in a conversation and find out if there's any interest.
Yeah.
If there's interest in that, then you may just have yourself someone new to delegate to, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Explain the why and the expected outcome. And that is so critical. If I don't understand what the outcome is supposed to be, how do I know where to go? Right? So be really clear about that and explain why it's important, because that sense of urgency, if you will, if you look at Cotter, why is it important? Why are we doing this now? That will give that person some sense of, or people, some sense of how much priority it has, really.
Yeah.
Promote the right resources and the right tools for what they're doing. So if they need a simple tool, if they need a calculator and we don't have those anymore, but they need they need an app to help them with something, and you give them a pad of paper, it's probably not the resource they need.
Yeah.
Right. So it's real important to ask them what they have, what tools they have, assess what they have, and then make sure that they have what they need so that they can get to the finish line.
One that often gets overlooked here is time.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So I think that's also another thing. If we're piling on something and not taking something else off, that can be a real problem for people to be successful in taking this new piece of work on.
I love that. And if you go back to the previous step or 2 steps before, when we're talking about the expected outcome.
Are we doing a 2-step now?
We are. We actually are.
1 step forward, 2 steps back. I don't know. There's so many things coming to mind.
I don't know how to dance like that. But when you think about resources that a person needs and the time and stuff, but also when you're setting expectation, it really helps if you kind of have a deadline and it's kind of far out there.
Yeah.
But this person's going to be doing milestone moments along the way, right?
Yeah.
We've just talked about that. Ask them when they can get something to you. Don't always impose the date, because imposing the date is your date. That's your date. And if they get busy or something else happens and they can't get to it, they've missed the deadline and they've disappointed you and probably themselves. So ask them when they can get it to you, because that gives them ownership.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that goes to set clear deadlines and checkpoints.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the next one is support without micromanaging. That's not delegation. That's micromanaging, right?
Mm-hmm. So essentially what you're saying is we give them the piece of work and then we just leave them alone, right?
Well, not exactly. What we do is, and that's what the previous one was, set clear deadlines and checkpoints.
Yeah.
Checkpoints are important. And having that conversation on the front end is, how often do you want to meet about this? You've got 6 weeks to get this done. I would feel comfortable if we had several checkpoints along the way. How do you feel about milestone checkpoints or something like that? And then identify what those milestones are so that they know, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Review and give feedback. And that is so important when they get to the end of the road, and even at the milestone moments, give some feedback, right?
Yeah.
And I'm big on positive feedback. And if I don't like the word negative. I don't think it belongs in business. I use constructive because I think it is what we're trying to do, is to help people move in a different direction.
Or developmental even.
Developmental is perfect. Yeah. But give that feedback so that they know how they're doing. And if you've done it right along the way, if you've made those checkpoints along the way, then when they get to the end, it's not going to be just review and give feedback. It's going to be recognition and appreciation.
Yeah, I love that.
And that goes so far towards helping people step out courageously on their own. Especially those people. And we're talking about being courageous by letting go of some of your work and trusting that it's getting done. But on the other side of it, there's courage when someone takes on a delegated job and that they're doing something they've never done before sometimes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm remembering Suzanne in her episode where she was talking about how courage is contagious.
Yes.
And so as you are a courageous leader by letting go, you are inspiring and sort of passing on that courage to the person who's receiving it and letting them be courageous in taking that work on. Yeah.
Yes, and recognizing that as it happens encourages them to continue to do that, which makes it go viral sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So those are the three that we came up with, and I think, I hope that everybody found that helpful. They're just steps, but sometimes you need that roadmap, right?
Yeah.
To make those first steps to be courageous in whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we hope you found that helpful. So when you're leading change, you can Google the Kotter's 8-step model. It comes right up if you want a lot more detail on that. The second one, cultivating a growth mindset through after action reviews using an appreciative inquiry model. And then delegation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can look that up on the web, and there are so many different tools for delegation. But if you look at the steps and the actions that go with them, most of them have the same steps. They're just rewritten a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah. So good luck with experimenting out there, taking some, as we like to call, small, brave moves from our
Nicole Bianchi.
She's been on our podcast a couple of times. You could always go back and listen to those episodes. The other thing that came to mind on this as we think about courage is that inside out. So really thinking about our own reflection and knowing our own values, that really helps us to be grounded when we actually take steps of courage. And you can also look back at some past episodes that we've talked about values. We've talked about them a couple times as well. Yes. So we encourage you to, if you're looking for more information, you can go back into past episodes around those things.
If any of the steps don't work for you at some point, don't be discouraged, because we always have sometimes that one step back, right?
Yeah.
Before we take the next brave move forward.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's okay. And knowing yourself and how you take that is critical.
Yeah.
So a nice look in the mirror, and don't forget those affirmations. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
I love affirmations in the morning, to set the day, set the tone for the day. So, okay.
Yeah. And it's an intention, right? The affirmations are an intention on how you want to show up. How do you want to show up as a leader? Who do you want to be? And we hope that you want to be a courageous leader. We need them. Right. We need them. There's so many places every day that we can step out and be courageous.
Yes.
Yeah. So have a fabulous week. And so let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have amazing guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, just like Suzanne. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring or informative, we hope this one is actually pretty informative. So please pass it along to them, text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. It really does make a difference, as well as if you can give us a 5-star rating or review, we would love that as well. Thank you, Trisha, for co-hosting with me and a great discussion.
It is always fun co-hosting with you. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, our listeners. We appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a fantastic week.
Take care.
I'm going to redo that.
I like that you did it that way, though.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
oh no.
So I'm thinking, okay. It has to be the cheese.
We're 5 minutes into our 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. Okay.